Hello everyone and welcome back to D20 in Disguise, your source for expertise on world building, storytelling, and miniature making. Now today's video is yet another episode of the Miniature Menagerie, a series where I create an assortment of miniature terrain for the gaming table. Now for today's episode of the Miniature Menagerie, I'll be creating some smaller and more simple miniatures, but I'll also be incorporating something very special into them. Lighting. Lighting in tabletop miniatures has always been something which has really fascinated me. It's really drawn me into the gaming table. It's really drawn me into the tabletop gaming experience overall. And I'm really excited for this episode for that very reason. Now, if you do end up enjoying today's episode of the Miniature Menagerie, then please be sure to hit that like button and that subscribe button and that notification bell if you want to see more content like this. But without further ado, let's get right into today's video. Welcome to D20 in Disguise. Alright, so for today's episode of the Miniature Menagerie, I'm going to be doing 3 mini projects. There are 3 miniature projects about building miniatures. The 3 types of miniatures which I'll be making include light up dungeon tiles, a miniature light up campfire, and a light up smoke signal / fire marker for your table. Let's get started by covering the difficulty of these 3 different miniature projects and all of the tools, supplies, and materials that you're going to need to actually make them. Out of the 3 miniature projects which we'll be making today, I personally decided to start with the light up dungeon tiles. So the first step I took was to actually get my dungeon tile bases. Now, these bases I have created in a past episode of the Miniature Menagerie. There will be a link in the description and at the end of the video if you want to go check that out. So skipping forward from that previous episode of the Miniature Menagerie, you now have your 2" by 2" dungeon tile. From there, you're going to do the same exact process which you used to originally create those dungeon tiles, just carving out a thin 2" by 2" block of foamular, and then smoothing those edges out so it's as clean as you can possibly get it. This is where the process really starts to differ. Because this 2" by 2" block of foamular is supposed to be a wall, depending on the style which you're going to make these light up dungeon tiles in, you're probably going to want a stone brick wall. So go ahead with your X-Acto knife, with your box cutter, whatever you're using as a cutting tool, you're going to want to carve out the general size and shape of the bricks in that wall. From there, you're going to want to make slight incisions near that cut to make a sort of V shape and really add those little divots between the bricks where the mortar is actually put in real life. This might take a little bit of practice, it might take a few test runs, but eventually you should be able to get the hang of really making it feel like a brick wall, like a stone, deep, grimy dungeon wall. Remember that once you've actually carved out the basic texture of the brick wall, you can always add small cracks in the bricks using your X-Acto knife as well. And this was how the dungeon tiles look so far once I had carved out the basic shape. They don't look half bad, really. Obviously, once the paint goes on, it's gonna look significantly better, but for now the texture looks very nice. From there, I cut a bit off of the original floor dungeon tiles because I actually wanted the size of the final dungeon tile to remain a 2x2 block. From there, you're going to want to start painting the brick walls. Now, to each their own with how they paint, but personally, I follow a pretty specific formula, especially when I'm doing stonework like this. I start out with a dark gray, pretty dark gray, not super black, but also darker than your average gray. That dark gray as a base paint over the entire wall. From there, let that dry. You want it as dry as you possibly can, and then you're gonna get an average gray, an equal blend between black and white. And you're gonna want to start dry brushing that pretty deeply onto the stone. Now, if you don't know what dry brushing is a special painting technique where, as the name suggests, you get almost all of the paint off of the brush, but there's just a little bit left, so that the brush feels almost completely dry. Now, you're going to brush pretty lightly over the stonework, so that just slight amount of paint still on the brush just hits the peaks of the stonework. Just like sometimes a storm only sprinkles snow on top of the different peaks of a mountain range, not the valleys in between the mountains. From there, you're going to let that layer of dry brushing quickly dry, and then you're going to get a really light tone of gray. There should be more white in this than black. And you're just going to really, really lightly dry brush over the details of the stonework. And that last layer should really make the highlights of the stonework pop, just adding a really high contrast feel to the stone. Then just let all of that paint dry, take a little break, maybe clean up your workspace. I like to keep my workspace clean while paint is drying. And then you're going to put a varnish onto the actual wall. This is for a few reasons. Firstly, my original dungeon tiles, I put a pretty heavy varnish onto them, really giving them that glossy, shiny, reflective feel. So that's one reason. Match your original dungeon tiles. But the second reason is to protect the dungeon tiles. Paint isn't very durable. Especially after a long time, it tends to flake and wear off. And especially because this is foam, it's fragile. So either get varnish in the spray can and just spray it on there, or just brush it on. Personally, I brushed it on. Just find your flow and find what works best for you. Now, once all of your varnish is dried, next comes the step where you either make things look really nice and insert the light and everything goes perfectly, or you kind of just set yourself back to square one and have to start again. This is where you actually insert the tea light. Now, personally, I just popped out the tea light from the actual base. It's pretty easy to do, you just need to fiddle around with it a bit and just pry it out of there. And then I cut off as much as I could so it was a small, compact shape. From there, I traced the outline of that new shape around the back of my wall section, which I just created, and I started slowly scraping out foamular, trying not to break through the actual designed stonework wall, but just getting that small little hole for the tea light to poke through. Once again, this is very delicate. Personally, I just took the tea light, got a little bit of ground, kind of scraped out a bit, but then just stuck it in there, stuck the light in there, and it's just a lot of trial and error. All I can really say is be careful when you're doing this, because once again, you can just set yourself back to 0 and have to start again. Now, after you have inserted your tea light successfully, I would suggest super glue to glue it down. It's really hard to apply pressure on that sort of thing without accidentally breaking the foamular wall, so super glue is probably your best bet. From there, you're just going to take PVA, super glue, Mod Podge, whatever you really want, and glue the wall to your original dungeon tile base. And you're through most of the project. Honestly, you could really stop here if you were really looking for a minimalistic style. But if you really want to go the extra step and make this look like a torch perched on the side of this stony dungeon wall, then this next section is for you. Now, for the actual flame, you can do a few things. Now, I just personally used a little plastic nub, little droplet shaped thing, which was on the original tea light. But obviously you could use like hot glue to shape your own. You could use some sort of other translucent material. It's all up to you, but I would personally suggest either hot glue if you're feeling kind of adventurous, or just use the original droplet looking flame, which comes with the tea light. Now, if you do use the original tea light flame, then you are going to have to probably shape it down a bit, maybe sand it down a bit, make it look nice, and then drill a small hole for the actual bulb on the actual tea light to go into. It's going to take a little bit of messing around if you do end up using the original flame, but trust me, it's a lot easier, especially if you have the right tools. From there, I definitely suggest super glue when actually bonding the flame to the bulb. You don't have to hold it down. It's quick and easy. It's what I found to be the easiest solution. From there, we have one last step to finish off these dungeon tiles. Of course, a torch has to have a handle. Now, personally, I used small little twigs you could find around your backyard. I didn't even bother painting them over. They personally look fine to me color-wise, so I just left them as is. Took a small ring of plastic, which was from the original flame, when I was just snipping off the end, the open donut-shaped end with scissors. That came off as a little ring. So I decided that would be a good little wall mount for this torch. So I went ahead and glued the little wall mount, the little ringlet, to the small stick, and then glued that torch handle to the wall underneath the flame, and these pieces were complete. Honestly, these pieces look just perfect. They look really good. They really add atmosphere to the table. I feel like if you really decide to go for really moody lighting in the room and just had maybe one lamp by the table and then just a bunch of different lighting on your actual table, it could really be a magical experience, especially if you like incorporated fog and sound effects, and you get it, I'm a nerd. But seriously, these miniatures can really add mood to the table and to combat encounters. Now, our next two miniature lighting projects I actually decided to do at the same time because they were actually quite similar. The main concepts for these two miniatures are very similar to a process which the DM's craft used. There will be a link in the description to the video which I got most of my ideas for this off of. This process was not my original idea, and the DM's craft is credited in the description below. Anyway, moving on to our next two miniature projects, our miniature light up campfire and our smoke signal / fire marker. So for both of these miniatures, I started by once again popping out the actual mechanism of the tea lights from the plastic bodies. Once again, the process which I use to do this is simply wiggling out the top little plastic flame. You just gotta mess with it enough. And then just prying underneath the bottom edge of the actual tea light and popping out the actual mechanism. Now from there, I heavily used hot glue to develop a shape around the actual body of the flame. Now for both of these, I decided on more of a mound. From there, I used quite a bit of hot glue to really mound up the area around the flame and make it look natural. This took quite a bit of messing around to make it look right, and be warned, the hot glue can mess with the on and off switches of the actual tea lights, so I would suggest before putting any hot glue on, turn them on, because you don't want to get into a situation where hot glue fell into the mechanism and you can no longer get the light to turn on. Then you've just wasted time and you really have to start from scratch. If you have it on and then right before the hot glue dries, you flip it off and then flip it back on again, none of the glue will dry, it won't stick up the switch, and there will be no glue that's stopping you from turning on the tea light. So after really making that hot glue look natural and mound-like around that flame, another suggestion which I have is to use the original flame end, which comes with the tea light, when making a campfire or a fire marker or a smoke signal or whatever. Because it's a lot harder to form a nice looking shape like that with hot glue. So after letting all of that hot glue dry, you should paint the actual base, all of the hot glue, so that it mimics the environment in which you want it to. So for the smoke signal, I decided on a dark gray. And then I was going to go even darker with the dry brush to a black. For the campfire, I decided that there was going to be a sort of ash pit nearer to the flame, and then some dirt and grass outside of that ash pit. So around the outer ring, the outer edge of the campfire piece, I painted it a nice soil brown, and on the inner ring, I painted it a lighter gray. Now, you're going to want to let that dry once again, and then go to dry brushing. Now, dry brushing is going to be a lot less effective on a smooth surface like hot glue, so you can honestly just skip dry brushing if you'd like, but it does still add a bit of an effect which you might want. For the soil, I added a slight yellow, slight brown, lighter tone, which I usually use for my soil dry brushing. Didn't add much detail, but I feel like it was still worth it. For the ash ring, for the inner ring, I added a lighter gray as a dry brush. Once again, it didn't do much, but it didn't harm anything, so it's okay. From here comes adding the actual terrain. So for the ash circle, I used cement dust, actual cement dust, as light gray ash. So I took some spray glue, just diluted PVA glue, went ahead and sprayed it on there, and sprinkled some of that cement dust on there. And then for the outer circle, the soil and grass circle, I just took some grass powder and just sprayed it once again with the spray glue, and then just sprinkled it on there again and just waited for that spray glue to dry. Now comes the fun part, finding some tiny little logs to really add the final feel to your campfire. Now once again, you can find these in your backyard or on a trail or really wherever's most convenient to you. I suggest making all of these little twigs about an equal length and then propping them up against the flame and gluing them down with some super glue. Now I also added some small stones around the edges of the ash pit, because when you're actually making a fire, you add some stones around the ash pit to stop embers or ash or fire from falling out onto the grass. Makes sense. Just making the miniature as logical as possible in its context. Now back to the smoke signal. Now what I did for this was a little bit more special. You can actually see it in my backdrop. I love how it turned out so much I actually put it in my backdrop. So I just took some pillow filling material, some cotton balls, anything like that, which really makes kind of a cloud-like feeling almost. And I went ahead and made smoke. Now, for the kind of gray and white and black variations in the actual smoke, I actually did a bit of finger painting. I dipped my fingers in different shades of gray and black and white and just kind of rubbed my hands in this cotton. And it actually made a pretty cool effect. From there, I just wrapped the actual cotton around the tea light flame, just glued it on there, and then added a little tuft, slowly dissipating as it went up to make it look as if the smoke was actually rising and slowly dissipating into the atmosphere as it rose. Like I said, I added this thing in my backdrop because I liked how it turned out so much. Now obviously I know this effect has been used before, and this is this is kind of a pitiful and bad example of it, but it's literally my first time using it, and I'm really excited for what I can do with this kind of smoke effect in the future. And that is our 3 miniature lighting projects finished. Now I had a blast making this. I absolutely love adding in fog and lighting and just anything like that which really adds atmosphere. I really love just putting those things into my miniatures, really incorporating them into tabletop terrain. I just love it. It's so much fun. Now this portion of the video is going to be more of a quick channel update for my older viewers, my subscribers. So if you'd like to actually just skip over this, and please just skip to the timestamp up here. I'm just gonna be blunt. I'm not doing the quarantine updates anymore. I feel like they're irrelevant. I feel like you guys aren't enjoying them. I feel like they don't serve a purpose. They don't educate, they don't inform, they don't entertain. I don't really see what purpose they serve. And I don't know. I'm not gonna do them anymore. I want to focus on you guys and really, like, I want the mission of this channel in my mind is to help blossoming GMs get better at storytelling and get better at world building and get better at miniature making. And the quarantine updates don't do any of those. Not one of them. However, I do think they did serve one good purpose. They've really started getting me used to a weekly upload schedule, which for me and my real life commitments and stuff is a lot. A weekly schedule is very busy for me, and I know, like, that's like the minimum in YouTube. Blah blah blah. I value my sanity more than views and subscribers. But you know what? I think I'm gonna try it out. I think it's a thing worth trying out. I think for the next 3-ish weeks I'm gonna do weekly uploads, just 3 videos, and you know what? From there I'm gonna decide if I'm gonna stay that way or if I'm gonna go back to every other week. Just uploading a video every other week, which was fine. I feel like that's absolutely fine. But I think I could kind of make it a sort of over the summer thing, because once school gets back into session, goodness, I'm gonna be so busy. So I think over the summer, if I could make a weekly upload schedule, I think that would be really great. And I think it'd be great for everybody. I get to do more of what I love, and you guys get more videos. It's a win-win. I also have been really working on my studio, my setup. And goodness, have I been plagued with technical difficulties for the past 4 days. Let me tell you, I am barely recording right now. Like, I am surviving by the skin of my teeth, technically. Like, just like 3 hours ago, all of the power went out. And I was about to record, and now it's like almost 11 at night, and I don't want to be here. But you know what? I'm committed now. I want to finish this. I want to see it through, and I want to get better. I want to get better for you guys. You know, like, I gotta remember, this thing isn't for me. This is for you. And you know what? Whatever betterment I get along the way, wow, that's a bonus. But I want to teach you guys more about GMing and miniature making and world building and all of that. And that's fun to me. I enjoy talking about what I love and sharing what I think. Anyway, I'm going to stop babbling on. This section is probably going to get long, and I'm probably going to cut a lot of it out. You better editing, Caleb. You better edit it out. Please leave your thoughts about a weekly upload schedule in the comments. And also leave your thoughts about all of the special edits which I made in this video. I want to hear your honest opinions, guys. I want to hear what you actually think about the videos. I want to hear your honest opinion. Like, I'm really working on my editing. I'm really working on my producing. I'm really working on my persona and my layout while I'm recording. And I want to keep improving for your guys' sake and my sake and just the enjoyment of all of us. That's my end goal. Anyway, if you have any suggestions for my future videos, then please leave your ideas down in the comments. I read all of the comments, and I absolutely love hearing from the community. Anyway, you all have a great day. Keep on creating, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.